tuned because today your attention is mandatory. Over the last couple of shows, I've tried some things that I've never tried before. Automotive related, of course. Tommy helped me through some of the difficult panel repairs. Some I mastered, some I didn't. On the Challenger, Kevin shared his tricks on vinyl top installation. Mike walked me through the glass installation, and Brent taught me more than I could absorb on top-notch painting. I think next time, we'll try the vinyl job ourselves. The glass, I'm still not gonna do. But sometimes we have no choice. And that's how I learned how to overhaul this confusing, scary, and unavoidable part of every car. Some transmission shops get a bad rap, mainly because when they're explaining to you what the problem is, it all sounds like Yiddish. Some bad shops will take advantage of this lack of knowledge. So pay attention today, and you won't get caught with your pants down. For a little added insurance, ATSG has over 100 manuals covering foreign and domestic automatic transmissions. Now, I'm not going to cover this whole book, but I will hit the high points. Our patient today, this blown apart Turbo 350 automatic. The first thing you want to do is inspect the case for any cracks or damages. Always check around the bell housing, because that's where it bolts to the engine. The second thing, you want to clean and level off this mouse maze full of balls. Don't worry, I'll explain what that does later. The easiest way to clean it off, take a file and just file it down. This is the governor. I'll explain what that does later on too. But for now, you want to inspect your governor board. Make sure that there's no obvious scarring, and if there is, they make a tool to fix it. You can also stick the governor in, wiggle it side to side, make sure it spins freely. Good day, governor. A scribe releases the snap ring, because under this cap lives the accumulator. It stores fluid and regulates pressure for a smooth transition from first to second gear. A special tool is needed for the next item on our list. It adds compression to remove another snap ring so we can get to the low reverse piston. A simple blast of air pops it out. With the case totally bare, it's time to clean it up. The outside is just for looks, but like a Twinkie, it's what's on the inside that counts. Spend some time here. You don't want any trash chewing up your new parts. If you don't have a parts washer, your local car wash will do the trick. With it clean and dry, the low reverse piston can go back in. Its function is simple. Affected by fluid pressure, it dictates forward or reverse movement. Before we start reassembling, there's something that you guys need to know. The Turbo 350 came in a couple of different configurations. You have your short shaft, which is a 6-inch tail shaft housing. Most of your cars utilize this. Then you have your long shaft, which is a 9-inch tail shaft housing. Full-size cars and full-size trucks use this. Now, our application is going to be a long shaft, and it's a good thing, because somebody boogered up the short. This ring gear is still in good shape, so we'll transfer it over to our long shaft. With the Torrington bearing at the bottom of the case, the long shaft can be installed, and everything else gets stacked on top of this. Before I start stacking, I'm going to do my best to explain an automatic transmission in 30 seconds or less. This cutaway from WildTech is going to help us do just that. It all starts with the converter, which converts mechanical energy to fluid energy. The fluid goes through the pump and the valve body, which controls these 4 clutch packs. This pack is always engaged. Once you put it in gear, fluid pressure engages first gear. Spring pressure gets overridden. The clutch pack releases, giving you second gear. Once pressure gets too high, it'll release, giving you third gear. Hence, a 3-speed automatic. Clutches alone won't change your gear ratio. That's where these come in. This planetary gear set spins inside of a ring gear, giving you a specific gear ratio. This set is a little bit lower than the other one. Now you're probably wondering why there's only 2 in this transmission. That's because there's a little bit of sharing going on. Low reversed, second and third. At this point, I'm simply rebuilding the transmission, replacing stock parts with new ones. Some of these clutches are worn out, even warped, heading you to a quick tow truck bill. These new ones, they may look flimsy, but there's so many of them, they share the load. I got some new steels as well. There was nothing wrong with the old ones, so I media blasted them to make a rougher surface for more bite. So let the stacking begin. Even though your clutches are new, you still want to check your stack to make sure it's nice and flat. Planetary loads first, followed by the stack. The low reverse sprag in a Turbo 350 is a known weakling, so we're going to upgrade with this stock replacement from a 700R4 simply because it's beefier. A quick test fit first. It sits on a step in the case, stopping it slightly above the stack. Clearance can be checked through this window. The thickness of one steel is all you want. Happy with that, this retainer spring will keep it from spinning. And the thrust washer and a huge snap ring will keep it in place. Why do they call it a sun gear in the center of this drive shell? Because all the planetaries revolve around it. More snap rings and thrust bearings before the ring gear finds its orbit. With that, we're about a third of the way there. Everything else will get done in the daylight. Now when we come back from the break, I'm going to show you an easy way to check your handiwork before you put it in. Hey, quit chomping on those chips. The break is over. We're about a third of the way done on our Turbo 350 automatic transmission rebuild, but we've still got a lot of work to do. Some of the work has been done for us. We bought this entire rebuild kit from Bowler Performance Transmissions. Everything from new clutches, steels, bushings, Torrington bearings, even this hardened steel race and new sprag for this direct drive drum. The old ones look fine, but for cheap insurance, we went ahead and replaced it. This next piece has been modified. It's shorter than stock, and here's why. This additional space is to hold one more steel and one more clutch, allowing the transmission to handle more torque. The last part that goes in our direct drive drum is going to require a special tool or a little bit of creative thinking. It's this spring pack. Its job is to disengage the clutches when there's a pressure change in the transmission. The challenge here is to compress it far enough for the snap ring. The forward drum goes together the same way, but look at what I found. There's not supposed to be a gap in here. This is how one tranny shop can give everybody a bad name. Here's what they did. The clearance wasn't right, so instead of taking the time and giving you a new part and fixing it properly, they took an old steel, they twisted it, put it back in, temporarily fixing it. It's wrong. It's a dirty shortcut. Every piston gets a new set of seals. Tranny fluid is not the greatest lubricant, so adding some motor oil will help keep me from tearing them up. A feeler gauge keeps them from rolling up on you. Another spring set, the clutch and steel stack, and finally the two drums. One slightly modified share the input shaft. The harder the tranny is next. I cleaned the front pump. The gears are still good. These channels send fluid to specific locations. Here's a few tricks I learned along the way. Cut a cleaned up low reverse clutch, then put it beneath the intermediate piston to tighten the clutch pack to come, and a spring pack that bolts on. There's a lot of play in the two halves, so a few hose clamps joined together will center it all up. Here's a cool way to check how well you put those drums together. Rest them on top of the pump, and with 60 psi of air, force it into the correct channels. Then you can tell if the fluid to come will engage the pistons. The forward drum you can watch. The direct drive drum you have to listen for. If they don't move or you have an air leak, start over. Ours is good. This band stops the direct drive drum from rotating for a split second during up and down shifts. The intermediate clutch and steel stack is next. This is one of two wave springs that cushion internal forward movement of the parts and stops the knocking during shifts. A gasket and some lube to lock in the pump. Guess what? We just overhauled and slightly modified our Turbo 350 transmission. Now we could install the valve body and drive it, but that ain't our style. So after the break, I'm gonna show you how to firm up your shifts. And for you guys in Oklahoma, that's a hitch in your giddy up. Y'all come back now, yeah?
This week's MuscleCar Flashback, the 66 Impala 427 SS.
It's 1958, and a new GM legend was rolling out on the streets. It had size and style, and its name, Impala. Dramatic gull-wing fins and headlights reminiscent of the 55 Chevy were just a couple of the features that made the early Impalas stand out from the crowd. By the early 60s, Impalas had lost their fins, but stayed true to their 6 aviation-style taillights. They were also available with one of the most legendary engines of the 60s era, the 409. But by the time 66 rolled around, Chevy bombed that old design and put together an all-new handsome devil. This 66 can be found in Floyd Garrett's MuscleCar Museum. It's in Sevierville, Tennessee. It's one of over 90 cars on display at this little slice of MuscleCar heaven. New for 66, the Impala was offered with the largest engine yet, a race-inspired 427 turbojet. Hauls this carriage around to the tune of 425 horses. A single Holley 4-barrel carburetor keeps all those ponies breathing. Drop the clutch, and the Dragoons charge through the 4-speed transmission and out to the posse before doing battle with an unsuspecting patch of asphalt. If you want to pick a street fight, you might as well look tough doing it. Covered. The Impala's low stance and long body lines make it look more like a predator than the prey it's named after. Bodywork that's anything but flat is topped off with a streamlined trim package. Serious badging lets the competition know this Chevy ain't shy about what it's packing. A bright red paint job is hard to miss, but just in case you did, these 4 big headlights up front, along with a chrome bumper and grille, should catch your eye. If not, do us all a favor and stay off the road. Out back, Impalas lost their spaceship look and squared things off for a more modern appearance. Trimmed for style and powered for smiles, the Impala interior was made for the guy who loves some legroom and still had enough space to bring some friends along. Even our camera guy couldn't resist trying it on for size.
Oh, that's so good.
A dash that's as roomy as the interior makes for easy viewing, while a stereo along with the rumble of the exhaust keeps the ears happy. As far as climate comfort goes, forget about it. This 427 has better things to do than spin a compressor all day. It's a nice package all the way around. Slap a set of red wheels on it with some center caps, and you got a complete street fighter. Watch out if you want to lay some pinks down against this piece of muscle. If you're not careful, you might be walking home after you pull your feet out of your big mouth. But you can practice your walking later. Stick around. We'll be back in a few. We're back, and in case you just joined us, you missed out on the rebuild of this Turbo 350. It's been cleaned, checked, new and old parts installed the right way, and a few cheap tricks along the way for some extra oomph. But you're not too late for the biggest, most popular, and inexpensive upgrade you can do to an automatic transmission. You can do it at home with no special tools in your driveway, in about the same amount of time it takes to drop the kids off at the pool. What is this miracle, you ask? A shift kit. Earlier, I showed you how the fluid is directed to specific locations by these channels. It's the valve body that controls when and how much fluid gets released. It's truly the brains of the transmission. It even looks like one. There are several spool valves throughout, each one affecting several different functions. Gaskets and separator plates play a major role, as well as these confusing little check balls, especially when you remove the valve body and they fall to your feet. But there's tech manuals that will get you through this. You don't have to understand every part of this maze. Just accept the fact that you're going to be reading the instructions. A shift kit simply manipulates flow and rate to alter when your transmission shifts and how hard it's going to lock into gear. It's that simple. It all starts with the spring rates in this valve body. They're held in by these pins that rarely fall out this easy. Only 4 valves get tweaked, one at a time. We got this Transgo Shift Kit from Bowler Transmission. These springs control your shifts. This red one is for RV use. We don't want that. We're going to use the orange for competition. The difference between them, the RV spring still firms up your shift, but this one hits like a sledgehammer. Curiosity could hurt you here. Don't take the valves apart. Leave them alone. All you're doing is changing the springs. How does Vaseline play a role in all of this? Well, it doesn't, but when you're laying on your back, it holds all the check balls in place temporarily. These act as restrictors, slowing down the flow in both directions. It's pretty easy to tell where they go, but check the manual anyway. Smoothing out the new spacer plate will help for a better seal. At first glance, it looks like a stock one, but not quite. Some of the channels are a little more restricted. Don't ask why. More Vaseline to hold the gaskets in place, and another one for the spacer. With the main valve connected to the shifter, you just installed the shift kit. In fact, you did better than that. You can buy a worn out 350 for about $100, $200 for the overhaul kit, $80 for the shifter, and for under $400, you've got yourself a stout Turbo 350 with some performance upgrades. A new one, run you about $700. Couple of closing tips. Don't forget to change the springs in your governor. That'll allow for those higher RPM shifts. Don't use a rag to dry your parts. The lint will get inside and kill it. Use compressed air. One last thing, change your tranny fluid sometimes. It'll help it tolerate the abuse you're going to put it through. You've tolerated mine enough today. Later.